Good morning and welcome to the April 17th Transportation Infrastructure and Planning Subcommittee meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order at 10 o'clock. Can the city attorney explain public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public may speak for up to 2 minutes to comment on agenda items to be discussed. Comments must be related to the agenda item and the action being considered by the subcommittee. General comments that go beyond the scope of the agenda item must be made in the call to the public session at the end of the agenda. The City Council and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending investigations, claims, or litigation. Additionally, any member of the public who appears before the subcommittee in their capacity as a lobbyist must, as required by Phoenix City Code, disclose this fact before addressing the subcommittee. The City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose their opportunity to continue to speak.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce our interpreter.
Thank you. This is Carmen Cota. I'll be interpreting this morning for you. Please let me introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience. Bienvenidos al Plan Maestro del Departamento de Parques y Reacción de la Municipal de Phoenix. Si va a dar su comentario, por favor, pause de la oportunidad de que se interprete su comentario y luego siga. Si necesita auriculares en la audiencia, por favor, déjenos saber. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes. Motion?
Second. So move. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. It carries unanimously. I don't have a speaker's. Okay, I don't have the speakers list, so hopefully there weren't any speakers on the minutes. Okay, thank you. Next is our consent agenda. It's items 2 through 9. Motion?
Chair, yeah, I would like to pull item, can I just have a brief, I just don't recall item number 2, and I just wanted to understand it. Possible, and then I'm ready to go after that.
Okay. We'll have
Madam Chair and
Jesus is coming
Councilwoman
down.
Pastor, Jesus Sapien, Public Transit Director, is coming to the table to answer questions on the intergovernmental agreement with Valley Metro on the Ride Choice Program.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the question. Yes, approximately 1 year ago, we issued an RFP to renew our alternative transportation programs contract, and these are taxi subsidized rides for individuals such as seniors and individuals with a disability, and we didn't get any proposals. So at that time, in May of 2023, we came to City Council for an approval for a 1-year extension on our existing contract. During that time, we anticipate transitioning folks to the Valley Metro Ride Choice Program, which is a similar program, basically a taxi-based subsidy program for those same individuals.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking, and is the ride choice, is that like dial-a-ride, or is that separate? Because I know there's 3 different pieces in Valley Metro that separate out.
Yes, Councilwoman Pastor, it is separate from dial-a-ride. This completely leaves dial-a-ride alone. This is only for individuals who choose to take taxi-based trips that they schedule on their own, completely independent of dial-a-ride. Dial-a-ride remains completely unchanged.
Okay, and that's what I need to, I want to understand it, because I've been getting constituents calling regarding the service, and so I just want to make sure that in this IGA, that when there are concerns about service, where will that go? Will that go to Valley Metro, and then Valley Metro will let you know, or will it come to the city of Phoenix, and the city of Phoenix will then let Ride Choice understand what we're facing?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, it could come to us either way. If they're a
Okay.
City of Phoenix resident, we have staff specifically assigned to the alternative transportation programs that can take those calls, but they can also go directly to Valley Metro as they are the contract holder. However, as part of this IGA, we participate in Valley Metro's special transportation program meetings, which includes Ride Choice.
Okay,
So we have basically some contract oversight.
that's what I'd like to know, because that's where things concern me. Most constituents get things mixed up, like it's Valley Metro, then it comes to City Phoenix, and we say we run the bus systems, but then Valley Metro has a contract, and then what ends up happening is we have a contract, so we really can't step in, and I want to make sure that we have some authority or oversight in our contracts to be able to fix what we need to fix.
Councilwoman Pastor, I agree with you 100%.
All right, thank you.
All right, then can I get a motion for the consent items?
I move to approve items 2 through 9.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. It passes unanimously. We have two information items, number 10, number 11. On number 10, Councilwoman O'Brien has asked that we have that as a future agenda item, and so we will make sure it gets on one of our agendas in the next coming months. And we had one person check item 11, said they were neutral, Dan Penton, but he did not wish to speak, so. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Then let's move on to item 12, which is text amendment work program, and I believe Josh is here. And Alan is here.
Madam Chair, here to discuss the text amendment work update program for planning and development is Alan Stevenson, Josh Bednarik, and Tricia Gomez.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We are going to give an overview of the existing text amendments that are out there for the Planning and Development Department, as well as an update on the discussions that Mr. Bednarik and his team have had with all of you guys about prioritizing those text amendments so that we can bring them forward over the next few years. With that, I'll turn it over to Trish Gomes.
Alan, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So as Alan said, we'll be discussing the text amendment work program, and just want to highlight that there's three main drivers for text amendments. Of course, city council and community priorities, legal requirements and updates, and then those that are privately filed. As you may remember, we were here last year in November discussing the text amendment work program, and we brought forth over 10 initiatives that for the timeline took us out to 2030. And per your direction, asked staff to look at ways that we could bring forth some of those initiatives to the council quicker, and also obtain feedback from all the council offices. Have done that, and we're bringing forth those that we think that we can bring forth in the next 3 years. So since we last spoke, staff has been working on the downtown code update, so that is one that we are ready to move forward. Housing continues to be of concern, an issue to address. Another theme that we heard a lot is sustainable transportation, and we'll go into more detail of each of these. And then modernization of commercial use standards. The first, as we said, staff has been working on the downtown code update for the past several years. As a city, as a development community, and as the community at large, we've had over 12 years of utilizing the downtown code and understanding what works, what doesn't work, what needs cleanups, what needs changes. Especially looking at enhancing and simplifying the public interface, so our streetscapes, as well as clarifying and simplifying our appeal processes. As I said, housing continues to be of concern and came up as a theme to address. So we're looking at potentially expanding our single-family townhome development to allow it citywide. Currently, this is allowed more in the central parts of the city. This also addresses a housing type as we talk about missing middle housing. Also to address other housing types or different type of residential uses like our nursing homes and hospice by looking at either reducing the special permit requirements, which goes through the legislative process, and replacing that with a use permit process, as well as we went through the ADU process, in looking at parking requirements for duplexes and triplexes, we needed to clarify that since as we're implementing those codes, that is not clear. Another theme is the sustainable transportation. So adding electric vehicle charging to the zoning ordinance, which includes definitions, where they can be used, how they can be used. Is there incentives to provide those? And then as well as codifying multifamily and non-residential bicycle parking citywide. And the last theme, which is quite large, is the modernization of the commercial use standards. As we saw with the ADU ordinance, we took the opportunity to look at our residential districts and reorganize that entire chapter. And we looked to do something similar for our commercial districts that would simplify all those commercial uses in a table format, look to improve our standards and clarity for mixed-use developments that we've dealt with over the time, look at increasing entitlements for multifamily in our commercial districts, potentially replace use permit requirements that we have in the code for, say, just as an example, tattoo or massage with some conditions that could be in the code.
Could I just ask a quick question? Could you give us an example of something that's a use permit today that might just become permission with conditions?
Absolutely. So just as an example, in our C1, our neighborhood commercial, for restaurants that have liquor inside, you are required to get a use permit. That might be an option that you provide some conditions for indoor, not changing anything with regards to outdoor liquor. But also, tattoo parlors require use permits. We've seen a lot go through since 2009. There may be some conditions to those.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
And then also adding some modern uses. These are simply examples, microbreweries, microdistilleries, but uses that we're currently seeing but are not codified in our code, as well as things to address our food action plan like vertical farming and other items in the food action plan. And then another item that addresses kind of vacant storefront is really looking at potentially some development standards that would help our existing non-conforming storefronts, that maybe there's challenges in the code that prohibit them from getting new tenants and bringing them in, maybe addressing parking, maneuvering, or screening that would make those spaces more viable for tenants. And with that, this is the timeline that we propose for those 4 text amendments or initiatives that we're bringing forward. So downtown code, as we said, we've been working on it. We're ready to bring that forward. We look to bring that to the mayor and council by the fall of this year. And with that, housing, starting those discussions this summer to be able to bring language to the council by March of 2025. Sustainable transportation, beginning that in the beginning of next year and be able to bring something forward by the end of next year. And then the modernization of the commercial use standards, as we said, is a fairly large text amendment, by starting that in the fall of 2025 and bringing that to you by the end of 2026. Of course, as I started the presentation, we brought you over 10 initiatives taking us out to 2030. Obviously, that doesn't cover everything, but just want to assure you that those items that we're not bringing forth in the next 3 years, we are still addressing as we go forward, such as the drought and new development. When we have rezoning cases, we do include stipulations to address water usage. Lighting and sign standards, we have been given a draft, so we are evaluating the viability of that draft. As we come to you later this afternoon, are excited if the general plan is to be approved. We are excited to be working with our village planning committees and their work program and working on a planning exercise that really helps to provide the information going forward about where density, land use, things are going that would help us further changes to our code to address housing. Climate action, we also include stipulations in our zoning cases to address green infrastructure. Our sign standards, we continue are looking for consultants to provide us those technical expertise. And then for the baseline area overlay and WU code is working with our transit-oriented community groups and moving that one forward. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
First off, I do want to commend you for working on text amendments in the past that dealt with affordable housing. I think we made some huge leaps in that direction. So I know you guys can be very flexible. So clearly, if one of these may need to move up the ladder, I think we would understand that. Are there any questions?
I have
Yes.
questions.
Woman?
Thank you. Well, how did you get to these choices? How did you, there are more on this list, and so how were they then chosen? I think there were more.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, we met with all the council offices to really get feedback from each council office to see what their priorities were, and obviously there was kind of a wide range, and so our approach was really to be able to touch upon many of the initiatives at one time and group them into these overarching themes.
Okay, because I know that there's a huge list, and I believe they're all priorities of us. I just wanted to figure out how you ended up with this list, and basically, I'm assuming that this list is very fluid. So what at one moment, we may be working on multifamily parking reductions, but as we move into discussions and other areas of crisis, then you may have to flip to drought and new development. So I'm assuming it's just fluid. And you will go where we will finish what we need to finish, but also then start something that needs to be started. Not that all of these haven't been started, because it seems like they have. These are ones that we can hit, are low-hanging fruit, I would say. Trish?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, you're absolutely right. These are the priorities that we're moving forward today, but as issues come up or priorities change, we will make adjustments.
Okay, so I have several questions. So on slide 6, it says allow certain residential uses, nursing home, hospice by use permit rather than a special permit. What's the difference between a use permit and a special permit?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, a special permit goes essentially through the rezoning process and ultimately approved through the mayor and council. A use permit is a quasi-judicial process which would go through our hearing officer, the Board of Adjustment, and ultimately to Superior Court.
Okay, what's the reasoning behind changing it?
Madam Chair, members, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, as we go through that process and you're looking at the impacts of those land uses, a special permit, has a more wide range of impact. These uses are small and localized, so really trying to address the impacts to the adjacent properties.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking this is because there's an incident going on in my neighborhood right now, And there's a huge back and forth going regarding these pieces, and I could see this property owner or other property owners come in and say, well, we're going to use this residential house as a nursing home, and hide behind that. And then we have to get NSD in the middle of it, and then it becomes a whole another piece of really avocation or advocates within the neighborhood to, sometimes we have bad characters within our neighborhoods. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because the special permit would notify, or neighbors would be aware of a special permit coming in versus a quasi-judicial, and they really have to then organize themselves in a way to show up at the hearing and be able then to say what their piece is. So I'm trying to figure out how this changes with community input, understanding that the legislature doesn't want community input, but I'm an advocate of it.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, both processes do offer or do allow for public input, and certainly is welcomed at every. Your special permit does have maybe a larger range or of notification. However, the use permit is still looking at impacts to the surrounding area and takes in consideration public input for those.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I want to put things on the record. My final one is, yes.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, if I could add to that, that particular one is about allowing those residential uses by a use permit in your commercial zoning districts,
Okay.
where you could have a multifamily apartment complex, for example, but in order to do a nursing home, you'd have to do the special permit. And so what that is really intended to do is say, in serving that type of population for where you're already allowed to have multifamily zoning, it's not that different of a nursing home type of use versus a regular apartment complex.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And I agree with what's happening. I'm just putting things on the record so that community understands and knows. My final one is, because this has been one in District 4 and downtown area, sign standards and lighting signs. When I entered office, this was one of my first cases that came about, and sometimes some of my active neighbors or constituents get heavily involved in this space and end up in court. So I want to make sure, and then if it's the lighting, if it's the piece that I had started with Alan, because there was in the downtown code, I think it's a downtown code, where there's certain kelvins you can have and certain luminas or everything else. In particular with the dark skies advocates, is this what that is?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, yes, that is one aspect of the sign code that we are looking for a consultant to provide that expertise. We did several years ago brought in a lighting expert to provide some of that education and background. And so as an interim measure, we have been addressing that through stipulations of our sign applications that deals with the color, temperature, and lighting, shut off, dimming, things of those natures, which hopefully we can further as codify as regulations in our code. So we are trying to address those issues in an interim basis through our stipulations of those cases that move forward.
So now will this be like finalizing it? Because I think I've been working on it 10 years.
Yes, this would give us the opportunity to put that into the zoning ordinance.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That's what I want eventually to get it into, so that it doesn't become a back and forth. It's very clear. And it's been by case, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You've done a great job.
Are there any other questions? Councilwoman O'Brien.
I'm just going to go back to the point Councilwoman Pastor was making real quickly. What is the difference in range between finding about a special use permit so that folks would know?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the subcommittee, a special permit notification requirement for property owners is 600 feet and neighborhood associations is 1 mile. A use permit is property owners with 150 feet and neighborhood associations within 600 feet.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I'm excited to see on housing the expansion for townhomes citywide. As the North Valley grows, we need opportunities for diversity and certainly for that starter home. And this is a product I think that will help our folks get into those starter homes. I'd like to touch on the sustainable transportation area. And I commend you for the two notations you have there. What I'd like to see us add to is the micromobility parking to make sure that as we make more of our, parts of our city more walkable and whatnot, that we have that micromobility parking available. Make sure I got to all my notes. And lastly, I would love to know when we could look at an option so that, like with DMV, right? If I have to go do something with my driver's license or car registration, I can go to DMV, and sometimes they're quick, but sometimes the lines are long. But I can pay a third-party vendor, right, to go register my car there. I pay a little bit more, but when might we look at potentially offering some of our folks the option to pay to go through our process and maybe get through a little bit quicker?
Councilwoman O'Brien, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As a department, we're tentatively scheduled to come to you on the May 21st policy meeting to talk about process improvements. While that's certainly not something that we're proposing at that time, I think we can certainly have a conversation about the innovative things that we're doing now, and where you as a council, as we present to you the things that we're committing to do, where you'd like us to keep going with that.
Okay.
So I think that would be the most appropriate time for that conversation.
Wonderful. Look forward to hearing that presentation in May. And again, thank you for all your hard work. I know you have a daunting task. This is a long list of things to complete, and we'd all like it done yesterday. So I appreciate your hard work and diligence in trying to check things off the list. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hodges Washington.
Thank you, Chair. Just had a couple questions. I want to start off and say thank you for the presentation. I was specifically excited to see that housing is set for our March 2025 tentatively. As you recall, the last time you were here before subcommittee, one of the requests I did have was for us to prioritize housing. And you guys, I thought summer of 2025 was being ambitious, and I'm happy to see that you're actually planning to actually exceed that goal. I know that the ADU and the parking text amendment shows us this is a process that's very intensive, but I'm thankful that you're taking the initiative to do that. I just wanted to ask two questions. I see on slide number 10 as well as slide number, I want to understand the difference between the housing that is slated to be the text amendments for housing that is slated for July 2024 through March 2025 versus the outstanding text amendments in slide number 10. Is there a distinction?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Hodge Washington, members of the subcommittee. Yes, so the initial housing is to address or expansion of the single-family townhome. So looking at that provision and then looking at changing from special permit to use permit for some of those nursing home, hospice type uses. What's on the later slide, as part of our work program for the village planning committees and as a part of the general plan, is to look at the land use map as well as exercises to look at core centers and corridors so that we can have a community discussion about where density, increased density is appropriate, where are those land use changes being made, which will help inform us about those future changes for housing, future text amendments for that. So we think that planning exercise can help inform those next changes.
Thank you for that clarification. That is helpful. One of the things I wanted to add us to actually consider as we do this text amendment process, I wasn't sure which process, which part it would fall into, but I think we should also look into providing whether or not amendments are necessary for alternative living arrangements, such as co-living spaces, those types of things, whether or not that should be added to the, I wasn't sure which segment I should ask for that to be looked into, but I think we need to, I believe in a variety of housing options, and that is one option we definitely, I think, need to consider, whether or not our current zoning and our code makes it difficult for that. So thank you for that clarification. And then my second question was partially answered when you spoke to Councilman Pastor and Councilwoman O'Brien regarding lighting and signs and the signage standards. Is the vision that they will be kind of consolidated, or we think they needed to be separated? And Josh is smiling and nodding, so thank you.
Councilwoman, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I was smiling because as Trish mentioned, we have tried several times unsuccessfully to bring, this is probably from a technical standpoint our most intense text amendment, and we really need a lot of help with it, and we have just not had any luck getting a consultant on board with the legal and technical expertise. And so, you know, a lot of how we tackle that text amendment is going to be predicated on who and if anyone responds to our next RFP. And so that, my apologies for the smile. We're hopefully I think it'd be the third time. Hopefully the third time is the charm that we can get somebody on board with that.
And I took your smile to mean, okay, I anticipated that question. Here we go. So I thank you so much for that. That is it, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation, and I do want to echo my colleagues. You guys have done a tremendous job. I know you've been short-staffed, and you've been really trying to get the most necessary text amendments completed, and I appreciate your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is item 13, Parks and Recreation Aquatics Update.
Madam Chair, here to introduce her team for the update on the aquatics program is Cynthia Aguilar, Parks and Recreation Director.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. With me today are members and our management team from our aquatics division. We have Assistant Director Tracy Hall, Deputy Director Scott Coughlin, and Aquatic Supervisor Becky Kirk to provide you with an update today on the upcoming aquatic season.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for having me here today to talk about the pool season. We're really excited to open 18 pools this summer, 16 which will be open all summer, and 2 that will be open for 1 month each. As you can see, Salito will be open in June, and David C. Uribe will be open in July. These pools were selected based on geographical location, as well as ensuring that our neighborhoods, each neighborhood has a pool to swim in throughout the summer, as well as attendance, and those popular pools that are highly attended are opened as well. This is the greatest number of pools that we have opened since the pandemic, so we're excited to be able to have the majority of these pools open this summer. Our swim season this year will begin on Memorial Day weekend. It will be open over the weekend, May 25th through the 27th, open noon to 6 p.m., and then our full season will start on June 1st, ending July 28th, every day from 12 to 6, except for Fridays when we are closed. In August, we will open 8 pools, 1 in each council district, for the weekends from 12 to 6, closing on Labor Day weekend. This year, our programs that we're going to be offering at the pools will include our Cool Kids program. That is a program where kids swim for free if they are 17 years and younger. Sponsorships are the ones that allow these kids to swim for free, and those sponsors are through the Milwaukee Brewers and SRP that have given us donations to make that program successful. We're excited to reinstate 6 swim teams this year. Those have been geographically located throughout the city. And we are going to extend and expand our AquaFit program this summer, also to include some evening classes as well. Our adult swimming and our youth swimming lessons will continue this summer. As we expand those, we also have been able to secure funding to discount swimming lessons at the majority of the pools. Not all lessons, but select lessons will be $3 thanks to the Diamondbacks. This year we changed registration a little bit. We have 2 registration dates. The first one will be on April 25th. At that registration time, we will register all classes that begin in the month of June. And then on June 14th, we will register for classes that begin in July. We made this change due to our wait lists and the demand for the classes, and to hope that this will encourage people to show up to the classes when we hold them. We have a lot of registration and a lot of no-shows, so we're hoping to get more people in the actual classes after they've registered. Our recruitment efforts this year for our lifeguards include our junior lifeguard program and lifeguard academy. It started last summer. This is a program that we will continue, and we've continued to have to grow our lifeguard bench. People that are interested in becoming lifeguards, we teach them the skills during the summer when they're 14 years old, 15 years old, before they can be a certified lifeguard, so they get a taste of what it is. They spend their days at the pool, and then the following year, at the end of the program, they get certified, and the following year, they're able to apply and work for us. We continue to do our neighborhood outreach and our community outreach, as well as special events. This year, we did our 2nd annual Polar Plunge in December. We had a great turnout where we invited our returning employees to bring a friend, get them registered into a lifeguard class, and jump in a cold pool. So that was a lot of fun. We also enjoyed the second parade, the APS Electric Light Parade. We entered a float and had about 50 lifeguards walk with that float and hand out recruitment materials, and were seen in the month of December when lifeguards really typically are not seen. We continued our high school recruitment by not just going to the high school swim teams. We included the PE classes. We went to high schools during lunch hours to talk to kids. We had actual presentations in some of the classes at some of the high schools where we could have a question and answer session with them. And we included other sports, including basketball and wrestling and in the different sports where we were able to table outside those events at the high schools. We continued our social media outreach. That is a huge piece of our outreach with the Phoenix Lifeguards Instagram page and our Facebook page. And then we continued our shallow water lifeguard program, which we started last year, where we certify people that are interested in being lifeguards. Instead of at 12 feet of water, we certify them at 4 feet of water because they may struggle with being at the depth of 12 feet to do those skills. And then we work with those lifeguards to promote them, to get them to able to do those skills by the end of the summer, the middle of the summer. Since COVID, we have really worked on our wages. The city has really looked at what the wages have been for lifeguards, and we've incrementally increased wages to really make it marketable and competitive with not only other aquatic sections within the state, but other retail competitors that these teens will go to that are year-round. And so as you can see, a lifeguard in 2019 was making $11.35, where today they'll make $17.72. In addition, we do offer the incentive again this year. It was a $3,000 incentive for our pool managers and a $2,000 incentive for assistant managers, our swim instructors, and our lifeguards. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you. I like, slide it is 3, maybe. Okay. It's the swim season. I actually would like to work towards, and maybe a huge campaign to work towards, to open all our parks and be able to extend the hours. Noon to 6, I find difficult because someone like me who had my child take swim lessons usually got off at 5:30, and I believe there is a swim lesson at 6, where then I went to University Park, and where then as they were doing the swim lessons, I could swim my laps at the pool. So are lessons going on from 6 to 8, or how is that working?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, yes, swimming lessons do start at 6 p.m. And they will go, depending on the site, they could go as late as 8 o'clock at night. We also have the swimming lessons in the morning that start as early as 9:45 and go until noon. And so that kind of sandwiches the open swim hours. Prior to that 9:45 swim lesson will be when we offer the aquafit and or the swim team programs that could start as early as 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, so then that's what we're maximizing the pool, and it's being used during that time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, are all pools being used at that time?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, not all pools are programmed the exact same. It will depend on the number of staff that are allocated to that pool, as well as the demand for the programming that is occurring at that facility. And so we will look at what the demand is from previous years, and that's how we continually add to those programs.
Okay, so I'm going to use Encanto. Encanto Pool, pretty much any of their programming gets sold out or maximized and has a wait list. If I'm one that in the Encanto area, and say I want Aquafit, because that one is another programming that gets full. If we know that Encanto naturally just gets booked, where would be my next, strategically, where would I go next? And I would work on more the east and the west in order to activate more the east and the west, and north and south. But how do you guys look at that? I guess, how do you schedule this? And I'm coming from not a city side, I'm coming from a community college side, where we look at our space and we start to then maximizing and start scheduling to figure out how do we make people move and go see different facilities.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, yes, Encanto is completely booked. We will start programming as early as 8:30 in the morning, go till 8:30 p.m. We would recommend, we have other facilities. Coronado Pool is not far from Encanto Pool. Madison Pool is also opening up and will offer some of those same programming. Perry Pool to the east is also available. So there are facilities that are around Encanto Pool as well that will be offering some of the similar programming to be able, it's not much of a drive.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all. I'm excited to have more pools open this year. As a child, I have fond memories of Cortez Park, so thanks for all the work, and I know it will take a while to build back up. COVID really hit you all hard, so again, thanks.
Councilwoman Hodge Washington.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councilman O'Brien. I know last year, the pandemic, following the pandemic, we reopened. We had I'm happy to see that we're over half of our pools will be opening, so that's great news. I just had a couple questions because for those that are not open, for example, in my district, we don't see Eastlake and Grant being opened during this time, and I just wanted to know if there was a plan or any consideration to possibly transporting some of the residents so that they can partake in the coolness of the pool during the hot summer months.
Sure, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Hodge Washington, and members of the subcommittee. Yeah, so this year our goal, we have 29 pools in the park system. This year our goal was to open 23. So the reason being Eastlake is getting ready to go under renovation, and we're excited to see what that will look like next summer. And then as part of the GEO bond, there are 5 additional pools that are scheduled to be repurposed into neighborhood splash pads, 3 around the Harmon Pool regional concept in the bond, and then 2 around the Maryvale regional pool concept. And so that's why, because we're going to start on the design plans to work towards repurposing them into splash pads, those were not anticipated to open this summer, on top of the staffing challenge issues. We have tried to transport youth participants before, especially in that central city core, where you have a few pools that are not reopening, that are part of that GeoBond, Alkire, Grant, University as well. We had some success at University. We didn't have any that took us up on it from Grant and Alkire, but that's something certainly that we can try again to see if there's interest to try to get kids to the closest pool nearby.
I would definitely ask that we make that a priority to try and see if there's more kids that we can partake of the, it may, I'm not making excuses for them, but it may have been simply it was something they were not familiar with, and now that they know it's an opportunity or a possibility, they would readily avail themselves of this opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure, and I was not trying to be negative. I know Eastlake is under renovations, and as well as Grant, but I was just trying to give examples of parks that who normally would have the ability to be a cool space for individuals during the summer. I wanted to make sure that they still had an opportunity if transportation was a barrier. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Pastor?
I have a question. I've heard this, I've heard about splash pads and repurpose. When that statement is made, where are the splash pads going, and how are you repurposing?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. When we're talking about the 5 pools, the splash pad would go in the same location that the existing pool is in, so that would be a good project there to turn the pools into the splash pad. Also, I'm sorry, your second question, Councilwoman, you said location.
Well, how did you determine, and
Yes.
how are you repurposing, and have you spoken to those council members about this? Because I'm going to lead into something else.
Sure, Councilwoman Pastor, Madam Chair, and members of the subcommittee. Those were conversations that were had with Mayor and Council when we were going through the bond process, and then through that process and ultimately the approval that the Executive Bond Committee and City Council gave. And so the idea was that in the cases of Harmon and Maryvale, that there were 2 or in one case 3 pools, in some cases that were less than a mile away, less than a mile and a half away, that the infrastructure was aging, it's harder to staff these pools, and there was little to no shade or amenities, that we would give the neighborhood a regional pool that could be open more on a year-round basis with more amenities, and repurpose those pools into splash pads that would be open for even greater than a typical summer pool season. So they would now have an option of a splash pad nearby or a regional pool. That was the concept.
Right, and I just wanted to put that on the record for community to understand what's happening, because I don't believe the majority of the community within those neighborhoods have a concept or understanding of what is happening when we're repurposing the pool. Because what we're doing is we're regionalizing the pools. And those pools of those areas who are historically in Black and brown neighborhoods are now being repurposed for a regional pool. Am I I'm talking in the downtown area. So I'm just putting it on the record so the general public of those neighborhoods understand what's happening. We can talk at a very high level and have people on committees making these high-level decisions. I'm not saying it's a good or bad. What I'm just saying is we just have to own up or be very clear to those communities why their pool is being repurposed. And what I'm looking at and envisioning is in a repurpose, does that mean you're filling in the pool and then you're putting the splash pad on top of it? I'm trying to visualize what is happening.
Sure, Councilwoman Pastor, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'll actually let Scott, maybe Coughlin, just talk in theory about what happens. Is it the filling of a pool and how maybe just high level that will happen, Scott?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, what would happen in this case is the pool itself would be completely demolished and everything would be brought back up to native soil. If you've seen the splash pads at Mariposa and El Oso parks that have been built recently, because we have existing equipment there in buildings, so some of that may be repurposed to utilize for the splash pads, but the buildings would remain. So the buildings could be used for either a park bathroom or another amenity. University's building actually is historic, so that could be another amenity that could be used in that park. It has restrooms in it, and so it would make some minor changes. But at Grant, Alcar, same thing. The pool would be completely removed. A splash pad would be built in its place, and that's generally how that would happen. But we would repurpose some of the equipment if it's usable for the same items, or we would repurpose the buildings. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation today. Next, we turn to call to the public, and I'll turn to the city attorney to explain public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During citizen or public comment, members of the public may address the subcommittee for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits the subcommittee members to listen to the comments, but prohibits members from discussing or acting on the matters presented.
Thank you. Our first speaker, Lindsay Ruck.
Good morning, council members. My name is Lindsay Ruck. I work as a server for SSP America at Sky Harbor Airport. We have been raising our concerns about unfair treatment by our employer, SSP, including allegations of racial disparities in hiring and pay practices. Workers have filed several unfair labor practice charges against the city's subcontractor, SSP America, alleging that the company has violated labor laws. In recent months, 9 vocal union activists have been fired, including Jasmine Glass, who spoke out and was a whistleblower in the complaints filed with the city of Phoenix. SSP America is your contractor. They are your responsibility. Do you think that all our allegations of racial disparities mean nothing? We're asking for a fair investigation, not for you to just blindly believe us. We have asked you time and time again, investigate SSP America and these allegations of racial disparity. It's time you get to the bottom of what is happening with SSP America and ask if they are a right fit for the job. Thank you.
Next speaker, Michelle Hornstein. Hope I didn't blotch your name up there.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Hornstein. I'm a server with SSP America and Sky Harbor Airport. So far, at least 9 union activists have been fired from SSP since they first went on strike. SSP thinks they can scare us by picking out the loudest leaders, but they're in for a rude awakening. Workers will not be silenced. When will it be enough for this council to take what is happening at your airport seriously? Do you think that all these allegations of racial disparities mean nothing? We are asking you to investigate these issues. Time and again, we have asked you to investigate these allegations of racial disparity with your contractor, SSP America. The City of Phoenix needs to step up and take its responsibility seriously and determine if SSP America is truly the right fit. Thank you.
Next, David Bonilla.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is David Bonilla, and I'm a cashier for SSP America at Sky Harbor. I am currently on a leave of absence to work as an organizer with Unite Here Local 11. So far, at least 9 union activists have been fired from SSP America since they first went on strike. If SSP thinks that they'll scare us by singling out the most outspoken leaders, they're in for a rude awakening. Those tactics just won't work. Workers will not be silenced, but we are here today because Sky Harbor is your airport, SSP America is your contractor, and investigating these allegations is your responsibility. Do you believe that these allegations of racial disparities hold no weight? We urge you to conduct a thorough investigation into these matters rather than simply doing nothing. Investigate SSP America and these allegations of racial disparity. It's time to get to the bottom of what is happening with SSP America and ask if they are right, they're right for the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jerry Van Gass.
Good morning, Jerry Van Gass. You have a handout in front of you that I provided concerning 2024 is the centennial year for South Mountain Park. Back in 2017, 3PI money to the tune of $23 million was approved for a complete renovation of South Mountain Park. It was a 5-year plan, so it would be ready for the centennial. The 5 years came and went in 2022. We're nowhere near being done out there. In fact, there's some major issues out there with the infrastructure that nobody is explaining to their own personnel. And in talking to contractors, been out there since before Christmas. There's been no activity, no construction, and no answers. We want to know what is going on out there, because this is an embarrassment. Our centennial year in the park is nowhere near complete. With all that money, and you can see $10 million is supposed to go into the activity complex. And now we hear they want to take money and gut and renovate SMEEC, the South Mountain Environmental Education Center, which was just rededicated by our mayor 18 months ago after hundreds of thousands of dollars were put into it. Prior to that, the zoo put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. So you're telling me we've got to renovate this facility, which is the most prostituted facility in the park system, again, just to cover the huge problem that exists out there. We want some answers because this is already, we want to see the contract. Our attorneys have put in a record request for the contract for SMEEC, and the press is aware of it. It's only a matter of time before they're out there asking these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Isabella Renfro.
Hello, members of the committee. I am Isabella Renfro. I work at SSP as a line cook at Sky Harbor Airport. We have been raising our concerns about unfair treatment by our employer SSP America, including allegations of racial disparities in hiring and pay practices. workers have filed several unfair labor practices charges against the city SSP America, alleging that the company has violated labor laws. In recent months, 9 vocal union activists have been fired, including Jasmine Glass, who spoke out in was a whistleblower in the complaints. Oh, I have to go.
Next is Tim Sarakowski.
Well, good morning. I'm Tim Sirkowski. How are you guys? I want to go back to what Jerry was talking about, but more importantly, I still want to ask the question, why did you allow dumping from a construction site in South Mountain? Why? That hasn't really been addressed. In the dirt that was dumped in the river and stream areas over there, which was really against all laws, hasn't really been cleaned up. So how come it hasn't been cleaned up? If you go down there, you're going to see piles of dirt from a construction site that was from a private construction site still there, and nothing's been done with it. So I think we need to sit back and ask the pertinent question, why this has been over a couple of years, why isn't it cleaned up? Second question I'd like to address is they're having problems with their water system at South Mountain. They have a generator at the front entrance trying to pump the water throughout the park system. This has been going on for 4 months. Why isn't it fixed? Why do I have to come here and ask all these questions because I'm just a private citizen and this is their job? Why aren't they doing their job? I do construction, so when they're telling me, oh, we can't do this, if we were on a construction site, I would be fired. We need to address all these problems. Why did it take 2 years to open up Dreamy Draw? It was really 3 years. Why did it take 3 years to open up Echo Canyon? We need to start looking at this and asking ourselves the pertinent questions. Are these people really working for the people of Phoenix and this area? I understand that it takes time to do these things, but when you have a park system in the Centennial at South Mountain that was supposed to be having all these renovations and it's not done years later, it begs the question, why isn't it done? So if they need help, I'm happy to come down there and explain how a job site and construction site should be done, and I'll give them all my connections for all these people that can come down here and do the job correctly and get this thing done correctly. But we need to start looking at maintenance on the parks and doing maintenance. They want to open up all these other parks all over and they want to do all this stuff. You have to have a maintenance plan before you have an expansive plan of park systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker, and forgive me if I blot your name, Chaska Coggles-Hall? Sorry, I'm so sorry.
You're fine. I make jokes about it all the time. It's Coggeshall. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Chaska Coggeshall. I work for SSP America as a barista at Sky Harbor Airport. Workers have filed unfair labor practice charges against the city subcontractor, SSP America, for alleging the company has violated labor laws. In recent months, 9 of my fellow co-workers and union activists have been fired since we first went on strike. SSP America is your contractor. They're your responsibility. Do you think that after all the allegations of do you think that all our allegations of racial disparities mean nothing? We're asking you to investigate these issues, not just blindly take our side. It's time that the city of Phoenix takes this responsibility seriously and for the city to investigate these allegations of racial disparities. It's time that the city takes themselves if SSP America, it's time that the city asks itself that if SSP is truly something that aligns with our morals and standards that we profess. Thank you.
You. That's all. Call to public. Next is future TIP agenda items. In May, we have bulk trash, so we'll be talking about the West Phoenix high-capacity transit, and I think in June, we'll try to add the water annual financial plan as a discussion item. Are there any other?
I would like to add the South Mountain and regarding the 3PI.
Okay.
If we're to get ready for it.
Okay. Anything else? Then we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Make this a better experience for everybody, for our educators, for our children, for our community.
This was my first time doing Partner with a Principal, so I was very excited to be at Union Elementary.
We first started off by just having a conversation to meet each other and to share a little bit about our school, what makes our school unique. But then also, which really felt special, is she really spent time getting to know our needs.
One of the things that we talked about were teacher incentives and finding ways to just thank the teachers all year round for everything that they do.
We frequently recognize them with a note or a thank you card or something like that, but sometimes it's nice to get a little extra something to go along with that.
When a need arises, knowing that Mr. Welsh now has a friend over here at United Way that he can call for something small or something large. I can't promise that we'll always have what it is that he needs, but at least we can put it on our list. We can reach out to our corporate partners, our community partners, and see if we might be able to assist.
Valley of the Sun United Way is connected to community